Welcome back. You're still watching Latino Talk TV. I hope you enjoyed the singing we just had. It was I had goosebumps right now. So thank you so much. We also have some guests with us. We're going to let them introduce themselves, but they're here from the Cámara de Empresarios Latinos. They're two CPAs that are here operating in Houston also. But they're going to talk to us about the growth in the Latino community, the opportunity for business owners, and also the difference between hiring a CPA and a bookkeeper. Because in our community, especially in Texas, we do a lot of fly-by-nights. We believe in being mavericks in business. Everything we do is we just kind of put our boots on and go get it. But we leave a lot of things open at the very end, and we end up costing ourselves a lot of money, right, Ben?
Cleaning up the mess.
We clean up our messes, and it's really not that bad of a deal to try to do it right from the very beginning. So that being said, please introduce yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jose. I'm CPA Roberto Manzano. I come from Puerto Rico with 25 years of experience, and I'm going to introduce you my partner.
I'm CPA Ana Marta Bahamonde from Puerto Rico too, and we're starting our business here in Houston.
Okay.
The Puerto Ricans are taking over.
That's right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you want me to? I'm going to be your Vanna White today.
Okay, great.
And this is live television. So also, if you're out there, we're going to put the phone number on the screen in a little bit. Make sure you call in if you have any questions in regards to what we're talking about.
Sure.
So first things first. So why in Texas? Why are you coming from Puerto Rico?
Well, we come from Puerto Rico, and many people from all over the nation are moving to Texas for a certain reason. In the last few years, the state has enjoyed a growth of 4.8%. That has been a consistent rate for the last 5 years approximately, and certainly leads the nation in that sense. But for us in the Hispanic market and Latinos here, the important thing is that we are presently approximately less than 40% of the population here in Texas. Mm-hmm. And the projections are that within 10 or 15 years, we should be more than 50% of the population. So that's real opportunity for growth in the Hispanic market. Texas as a state policy is open for business. They try to reduce all the red tapes, and really it's easy for you to make a start of it here. But as Jose mentioned earlier, it's nice to start with the right foot, and it takes planning, takes advice, and sometimes Hispanics tend to think that CPAs are out of the reach at the beginning, and probably they should be knocking our doors at that time. Okay. So that's why Texas is a good place.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm very impressed that there's education about this by the Cámara de Empresarios, because the Cámara de Empresarios is made up of a lot of business owners that are from other parts of the world, if you will.
Correct.
And it's so important that they understand the laws, especially when it comes to the IRS, because the IRS is someone you don't want to mess with.
Correct.
Yeah, so I appreciate the efforts that you all have in educating our community.
And it's important to know that, as you mentioned, you don't want the IRS knocking on your door, and if they do, you better be prepared. And you can do that with proper planning, which can be done. And we have within the community the resources to do that. But you know what? It's also important. I wanted to show another graphic we have. In relation for our youngsters, this is a trend that was prepared at Texas CPA Society. The only graph important here is you see this curve of increase here shows the projected increase in the Hispanic market. If youngsters look at that, that's not a problem. That's a big opportunity. You have to look at this as an opportunity to look out for future education in finance, in accounting, in administration, because you young guys should be taking care not only of the Hispanic community, of all the state of Texas. And education is going to be the key here. But we have to know where we stand right now. We are probably at the first step of the ladder. There are many steps to be climbed, and education will bring that to us.
So tell me, why did y'all choose to become CPAs, and how did, you're both from Puerto Rico,
I can answer that for them. I mean, they wanted to count money.
They like counting the money, but in all seriousness, we have, University of Houston here. We have tons of people, going to school, but they all get marketing degrees.
Right.
Becoming an accountant or a finance major, it's few and far between. Like, I'll be honest, I have an operations management degree. But it's like the more and more I'm in business, the more I realize how important it is to understand, the fundamentals of accounting and business through the dealing with CPAs. So how did y'all get into it? What's y'all's story behind that?
Well, basically, one of the things that attracted us, both as a couple and individuals, is the variety of things you can do as a CPA. Normally, people tend to think of taxes only. Well, this is only one part of that. You actually have to get involved with planning. People like you that study a master's in administration can have a similar base like us, but basically we're trying to look at this from a financial, from an insurance standpoint. When you look even at projections and future plans, we have to mix in marketing techniques. So our profession is very ample in that sense, okay? And it does not fight with MBAs. It's not a fight. It just complements. Normally the same thing happens in health industries. You have nurses and technicians of labs, but you have your physicians, you have the doctors. So you have different levels of people who can work together in the same direction. The same thing happens here.
So you get 2 for 1, and if they hire you,
Right.
get a husband and wife.
Right.
Oh, yes.
So as a woman, as a CPA, has there been any challenges in that environment?
Oh yeah, all my life. Basically, when I started in the profession, specifically in Puerto Rico, only very few women were involved. As a matter of fact, during that year, it was the first woman to be in our firm was the first woman to be a president of the CPA Society, and basically it was very. But nowadays, the trend has changed, and now more women are CPAs
Right.
than men.
More than 50%.
So basically, have turned to be that women are more attracted to this profession. I guess basically they like to count more money and and control things. That's important.
control- That's right.
Well, I can tell you right now, let's be honest, my wife is the CPA in my house.
That's
You see? So basically, the important part is to get the license. After you study your bachelor degree, you go and take the test, and then you're licensed,
Yeah.
and you have to be licensed
Talk about this one.
in the state of Texas
Okay.
in order to be a CPA. And basically, you have to go through the exam, and afterwards, then you can join the Texas CPA Society, and afterwards, the Houston CPA Society. Both societies now in Texas is 28,000 members in the state of Texas, CPAs, and in Houston, it's the largest chapter, it's 8,000
Wow.
members.
So let's talk. You asked me to put this up, but let's talk about and for us as consumers out there, because the reality is we're afraid of those 3 letters. I mean, a lot of us we're afraid of those 3 letters until we actually need them.
Right.
When the IRS comes knocking on our door, or we're trying to get our house refinanced, or get any kind of lending, they ask us for those letters. Especially if you're a small business owner, you can't get anything done unless you have a CPA, stamp behind you.
Well, if you have a nonprofit and you need to be audited, I usually hire a CPA to
That's
come do
correct.
your audit.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
right.
I think the graphic says a lot, but if you want to tell us a difference, or for people actually,
Sure.
even the ones choosing a career,
Sure.
what the difference is?
Right. As you mentioned before, in order to be a CPA, you have to study accounting. So you have to get your bachelor's degree, and that's the first step. But then the real difference is basically summarized here. You got to get your license, which is normally controlled by each single state, but follows a very uniform rule. It's the same exam all across the nation. So basically, the same test is given to all practicing CPAs. In the case of Texas, as you mentioned before, we have the Texas Society of CPAs and the Houston chapter. They provide a very important part of this, which is the professional oversight. We just have to follow very strict rules in order for us to issue, audited, reviewed, or compile financial statements. So it's not a matter of putting numbers there and that's it. We are subject even to continuing professional education requirements. We have to take at least 40 hours per year to maintain ourselves up to date in subjects of taxes, law changes, finance, you name it. When you compare that to other areas that are involved, like many tax preparing companies, which deal only with tax preparation, you might have personnel that's very good, but normally they receive 8 to 10 hours of education and they start filling out returns. That might be good enough for very, very small or, let's say, simple cases. When things start to get complicated, you better get the help of a professional.
That reminds me, we have a lot of scam artists that
Right.
are doing the income tax returns.
Right.
and it happens all the time in our community. Unfortunately, a lot of our folks think of anybody that's a notary public can do your taxes.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and you see it all the time on the news where somebody scammed their checks don't come to their house. They somehow the
Correct.
checks are sent somewhere else.
Correct.
And so, do you run into a lot of those cases?
Yes, and we end up cleaning a lot of the messes they they create. So, but we really want to bring the message to the community that help is out there. You don't have to get yourself into trouble. If you have a very simple tax situation, there's many even free options that you can use, and they are very sure. The IRS even provides that kind of help. So you have to know that. But you have some complex situations, don't be afraid of knocking the door into a professional, because at the end of the day, you will be better off.
So let's talk about what really happens out there sometimes, right? We have some business owners that want to push the envelope until the very end. They're just gonna break the rules as far as they can. They're gonna they want to get to that point. To
Not our
deal.
community.
Oh, come on now. It's everybody's community. It doesn't matter. That goes across from the political fights right now with the immigration.
Right.
We have staunch people against immigration reform in some states because they're still benefiting from undocumented labor.
Correct.
So for that business owner that thinks he can just push until the very end, what are the consequences? What are the worst things you've seen for people that do business like that?
Well, the IRS is actually knocking on their doors, and again, they're just going to do something very simple. They're going to say, "You owe me this much," and there's nothing you can do. So that's a risk that if a business guy is willing to take it, well, go ahead. But it's an unnecessary risk, because they are actually knocking on doors of restaurants now. Professional service providers is the next target.
Construction.
Right, construction. So. And you come to think of things, expenses related to labor are valid deductions. So you have to make sure that you hire your people. It really doesn't matter how much it costs. You got a project that's going to cost X number of dollars. You make sure you get the right people there, and you get your deductions. So it doesn't make sense when you look at the numbers. And when they charge you penalties and interest, you'll see it was not worth the risk.
So let's talk about the culture now, because the majority of the businesses being opened up in Texas happen to be by immigrants and Latino businesses.
And home-based business.
And home-based business.
Internet-based.
So, and is the supply of bilingual CPAs matching the growth of business in Texas?
No, not really. We're less than 5% of Hispanic CPAs. 5%. It's really amazing. Again, that's a great opportunity for a young community, for them to get started in that. But presently, we are very, very underrepresented on that side. But there's always help. Okay, and in the case of, for instance, the tax season, for instance, it's a matter of taking the chance of doing your taxes now, but also taking in consideration that it's the perfect time to plan for 2014. This year, there are a lot of bad news on the taxes, a lot of tax increases, but most of those are for higher income taxpayers. Normally, you have seen maybe on the news that even the Medicare has a slight tax increase for people who make above $125,000, which is it's not that much of percent of the population. And the same thing happens with the capital gains, which was increased from 15% to 20% this year. And there are some new taxes about the investment income of up to 3.8%. A lot of increases. But then let's talk about some of the good news for local entrepreneurs. In this case, the personal exemption was increased to $3,900. And important, the mileage deduction, which we normally recommend, is much easier record keeping to take that other ways, is increased to $56.50. And we got a new deduction, which is really, as a companion CPA says, that's a gimme. It's a deduction related to the use of your home. You've got your house, a small space of that. You're allowed to take a standard deduction. You don't have to keep that many records. It's $5 per square foot up to 300 square foot. That totals $1,500, which is really very easy to take as a deduction. It's a valid deduction, and very easy to demonstrate in case the IRS knocks your door. Those are some of the few but good news that we have for this year.
I am not going to get this information out of the tax place in the panaderia down the street on Irvington. You know what I'm saying? And that's the kind of stuff that, you know, even me as a business owner growing up in Houston, that's how I used to do business. You know, the word of mouth, la comadre, el compadre, a ver quién sabe, quién conoce, you know, and then we end up doing it, and then we don't find them anymore. You know, so, you know, any other tips for a small business owner?
Certainly, you have to look for the future too. Good opportunity for planning now to think about the deductions you can take in relation to the IRAs, be those either simple IRAs or Roth IRA. Now is a good time. You can start with as low as $50 a month. So don't be afraid of thinking about large numbers about that. Just get that idea in your mind. The Hispanic community does not have the culture of saving. We should, and just trying to be in compliance with all the rules will get all of us into the mainstream, which is very important. If we're going to make changes in this community, we have to be part of that, and compliance is an important thing.
I have a question for Eduardo, but I also want you to give the information to how people can reach you.
Okay.
So Eduardo, you as a nonprofit tier, if you will, I'm sure you deal with CPAs, audits all the time. Is there any questions that you have from these two?
Not really any questions, because, you know, after you've been doing it for several years, you get used to it, as long as you don't do anything out of line or anything different. But just one of the things that is fascinating that we had been talking about in the green room is that graphic that he showed of the increase in the Hispanic community. I don't think you can emphasize it enough for young people to choose that as a career. Because, I mean, those jobs are going to be there. And that's one of the biggest questions that I get in my organization from our young people is, what do I do? And that question comes from people that are in college that will come and say, you know, where do I go from here? So that's good information for me to take out into the community, because, and also, as you said, you know, we don't get this information from our comadres and compadres, but we need people that actually speak Spanish to be able to relay this information to our community.
So for more educational information, where can we reach you if we need more information about that?
Sure, we can be reached at our email. It's mbcpas@gmail.com, or our office phone numbers, which is 281-671-6856.
Okay, and we thank the empresarios for having y'all join us today.
Okay.
The Cámara de Empresarios Latinos is an organization here in Houston. It's a Spanish-speaking organization that's just dedicated to educating the Latino business owners or multilingual. You know, it's not just Latinos. You speak Spanish, you can join the empresarios. So thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break, and we're going to come back with our last segment of the show, which is going to be talking about the Serve team. We'll be right back.